welcome to Crossroads. Folks, the anti-Trump resistance is now forming. And look, here's how it goes. President Trump, he previewed his plans for office, 200 executive actions, day one stuff, right? But this is already facing challenges. And the anti-Trump resistance, well, it seems right now to be forming mainly among federal government employees, kind of the middle managers. And look, the challenges for Trump's new administration, they're not limited to this. Just before leaving office, former President Joe Biden also took actions, and he put in place policies that are likely going to at least stall many of Trump's plans. And also on this, right before leaving office, Biden also declared the creation of the 28th Amendment for the Constitution for what he referred to as equal rights. And some are questioning whether that was legal or not. Now, I'll be going into these topics and more today, so let's get into it. Now, first of all, folks, President Donald Trump, he's the 45th president of the United States. He's also now the 47th president of the United States. And he has given some previews of his ambitious plans for office, including, 200 day one actions leading up to all this. But this plan could soon meet with resistance. In fact, it might already be. While the lead up to the inauguration has been, pretty smooth, right? We didn't really see the mass protests we saw last time. We didn't see people going on the streets and wearing their pink hats and marching down, Main Street in New York. We haven't seen any of that. But there's something else now taking place. So a poll recently showed that nearly half of the government managers in Washington, D.C., all the government agencies, they are planning to work against Donald Trump using their roles. Daily Signal said this. It said most Americans, even many of the elites who voted for Vice President Kamala Harris, are willing to support Trump's administration, according to an RMG research survey commissioned by the Napolitan Institute. Yet, it says, 42% of federal government managers who work in the Washington, D.C. swamp intend to work against the administration. It says RMG Research conducted 3 surveys in mid-December to study 3 different segments of the population. The polling firm focused on what it calls the elite 1%, who have postgraduate degrees, earn more than $150,000 annually, and live in densely populated areas. Main Street Americans who meet none of these 3 criteria and who represent between 70% and 75% of the U.S. population. And the third category, federal government managers, federal employees who live in the national capital region around Washington and earn at least $75,000 annually. It notes that most Main Street Americans, 59%, said they would support the new administration. Pretty good, right, in terms of support he's getting right now. While only 28% said they would resist it. We haven't seen them protesting much, so who knows. It notes that even the elite 1% proved more likely to say they would support 48% than resist 39% the administration. But look, we'll see how that works. The managers in Washington, right, 46% of them, saying they're going to try to do things against Trump, they would have the ability, if they want to at least slow walk some of Trump's plans. And look, this does represent a relatively powerful class within what they call the administrative state. This is the whole array of managers that Trump and others often refer to as the quote-unquote deep state. Now, they tend to keep their positions regardless of which party holds office. They're not elected positions, and they have a relatively high amount of power. Now, resistance from this class of individual, these middle managers, it definitely had an impact on Trump during his first term in office. In fact, this is a great analysis. America First Policy Institute just broke down some of these cases. This is what they said. They said most career federal employees honorably serve the American people, diligently following orders and implementing policies of elected officials. However, a significant minority does not. This report documents cases of career bureaucrats resisting presidential policies in the first Trump administration. It says political appointees who served under President Donald J. Trump reported, it says here, career staff at the Department of Education assigned to work on politically sensitive regulations, including the Title IX due process regulations, would either produce legally unstable drafts that would never withstand judicial review, or drafts that significantly diverge from the DOE's policy goals. As a result, it says political appointees had to draft the regulations primarily by themselves, meaning they could basically rig Trump's policies just by inserting language that they knew would get challenged. And so because they're the ones who have that power, they can kind of put landmines essentially within the policies. Another one, career employees in the Department of Justice, the DOJ Civil Rights Division, it says, refused to prosecute cases with which they ideologically disagreed, even when the facts showed clear legal violations. They were basically enforcing the law based on a colored perspective, right? What's the color of the person's skin? What's their race or gender or whatever else? And they were deciding to prosecute cases or to prosecute cases based on political motivations. It says this included civil rights staff, division career staff, refusing to work on cases charging Yale University for racial discrimination against Asian Americans and cases protecting nurses from being forced to participate in abortions. It says this, Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, career staff circumvented President Trump's hiring freeze, which was issued soon after he first took office, by crossing out new hires' start dates on their hiring paperwork. It says staff used Sharpie pens to adjust the start dates retroactively to January 19, 2017, the day before President Trump took office. And remember now that Trump has, of course, issued executive orders preventing hiring, doing many things to prevent, for example, like new rules coming through the administrations, right, to the different branches of government. They have done this before in ways where they can just change the date and get things through regardless of the orders. Another one, career lawyers, it says, the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, routinely gave political appointees misleading legal analysis. They would only cite cases supporting their preferred positions and omit contrary precedents, misleading people on, legal cases. It says some career lawyers refused to draft documents reflecting positions with which they disagreed. It says career attorneys at the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, did not inform political appointees about major cases the agency was involved in or the government's position in pending cases. And to learn what the agency was doing, it says political appointees had to monitor public court filings. They found a way to basically sabotage many legal cases just by cherry picking what they like and what they didn't like. And of course, omitting data that would have informed cases. It says the Department of Labor, the DOL, regulatory staff intentionally delayed producing a departmental priority regulation. A competent private sector attorney could have produced a draft regulation in 2 to 3 weeks. The team of about a dozen career staff claimed they needed a year to do so, a pace that amounted to each attorney in the unit writing less than 1 line of text a day. Imagine that, folks. You go to work, your job is to write things up, and in an entire day of work, you can only write 1 line of text. Now, there was, of course, more than that. That in no way represents the full picture of what was done to inhibit Trump's policies during his first administration. But the report gives a very small picture, and a pretty good one, of the very many ways managers in different agencies can at least stall or inhibit many of Trump's policies. And as we stand right now, if over 46% of these individuals who have that power are planning to do this and even stating it, well, that's pretty significant. Now, look, there's also the very real chance that many of these individuals are at risk of losing their jobs, which is the other side of this whole argument. And there are reports that many are currently bracing for that. They believe they're going to lose their jobs. There were reports that many were simply choosing to just resign from their positions ahead of the inauguration. There were a lot of reports on that. There's also the issue with Trump's plans to make many return to the office, right? They have to go back to work. They can't work from home. Trump did sign an executive order on that, and that could shake things up. This is particularly getting pushback from, government workers' unions. There's going to be challenges to it, but Trump already signed the executive order. We'll see if it works. But look, there's another issue, though. Many of them could simply be fired. Now, remember, towards the end of Trump's first term in office, he made key changes to laws, which we'll get into in a minute. And this could allow him to fire people who would otherwise, he would not have the power to fire, right? They're not elected positions, they're not appointed positions. Normally, the president can't do much about them. Changes to laws made it so that Trump does have the power to remove them. And early reporting was suggesting that Trump could fire around 50,000 government employees, which is a lot of them. Former President Joe Biden, he made changes to that policy, making it so that Trump may not be able to easily do that now. But there's still the possibility Trump could roll that back, and there is talk about that. He also mentioned as much during a press conference back in December. Watch this.
One is that if people don't come back to work, come back into the office, they're going to be dismissed. And somebody in the Biden administration gave a 5-year waiver of that so that for 5 years, people don't have to come back into the office. It involved 49,000 people. For 5 years, they don't have to go. They just signed this thing. It's ridiculous. So it was like a gift to a union, and we're going to obviously be in court to stop it.
Now, on this point, the new DOGE commission, the Department of Government Efficiency with Elon Musk, that could become one of Trump's main tools for pushing back against this type of resistance. The Department of Government Efficiency, with Musk in the helm, or Vivek stepped down from it, it is going to be looking for jobs to cut throughout the U.S. government. There's talk of possibly getting rid of entire government agencies. Although, look, in terms of firing people, that is often a more legally sound way to do it. You just get rid of the entire department or something like that. Now, we'll have to see if those rumors prove to be true. If they're actually planning on doing this, at the very least, they're going to be looking at the actual productivity of individuals. Are you doing your job? Are you showing up to work every day? No? Well, see you later. Are you writing one line of text a day? Well, time to go do that somewhere else because you're not here anymore. And, of course, they're going to be looking at the necessity of the job. Should American taxpayers be paying for this? Now, if it turns out they're not as needed, or they're even using their roles to slow things down, which means they're inefficient at least, well, they risk losing their jobs. At the very least, the DOGE department, right, Department of Government Efficiency, it puts an extra layer of oversight on each individual and some extra pressure, right? Now, it also seems this is putting pressure on individual government workers overall. The Guardian said this. It said the president-elect at the time and his allies have expressed support for the mass firings of civil service workers and abolishing certain government agencies upon his return to the White House, which has now taken place. It says officials at the heart of Trump's first administration have spoken of purging thousands of federal workers by using controversial powers to reshape the bureaucracy. It says now inside dozens of government agencies, staff are bracing for Trump's second administration. One individual said, quote, "It's pretty bleak." This is Steve Lenkart, executive director of the National Federation of Federal Employees, which represents 110,000 employees at various agencies around the U.S. and added, quote, "It's pretty grim." Now, it says the former president attacked federal employees on the campaign trail, claiming they were, quote, "destroying this country" in an August podcast interview, and added, "They're crooked people, they're dishonest people," and then added, "They're going to be held accountable." Now, they're, of course, framing this as Trump condemning, like, basically the entire government. That was not the actual context of those statements. But I think it's referring more to the ones Trump had in his sights, right? So they're kind of misframing it a little bit here. But it adds this. Trump has signals his support for reviving the Schedule F executive order. This is the big one. Schedule F executive order that he issued in his last days of the administration, under which swaths of federal workforce could be stripped of their civil servant protections and redefined as political appointees. And if you're an appointee, the president can remove that appointment. Now, advocates of the policy, it says, claim to have identified 50,000 employees that could be fired. And here's a quote. It says, "It's probably been 150 years since we had something like this happen," Linkart said, pointing to the Pendleton Act, which in 1883 mandated that federal employees be hired based on merit, which Trump has now brought back to U.S. law, by the way, merit-based hiring, subject to competitive exams. If you're not competent in your job, well, you might get fired because you're not good enough for it or someone else is better than you. And it says protected from political influences. And that's a loaded term there because some would suggest that a lot of them are going to be fired for having politics influence the way they're choosing to do things. But like also along these lines, Trump is probably going to bring back Schedule F. He is talking about it. That will allow him to basically overturn the changes Biden put in place to stop him from firing people. The DOGE department is working on this. And I think it's no coincidence that one of the first major challenges we're seeing is coming against the DOGE department, the Department of Government Efficiency. In fact, at least 4 lawsuits were filed against the Trump administration already over this. This was the big first sign of open resistance against Trump and his incoming policies. They're going after DOGE. They're trying to stop it. Epoch Times said this: "At least 4 lawsuits were filed on January 20th, Trump's first day in office, by multiple groups in a federal court in Washington. One was filed against DOGE by the American Federation of Teachers, Minority Veterans of America, the American Public Health Association, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, and others. Another was filed by the Center for Biological Diversity, and a separate one, it says, was filed by the National Security Counselors. Another was filed by Public Citizen, a left-leaning consumer watchdog group, and notes the Center for Biological Diversity lawsuit," the group said in a statement, "is designed to obtain records showing how individuals affiliated with DOGE, like Elon Musk, have interacted with the White House since the presidential transition began in November." And it says further in his inaugural speech, Trump said he would soon establish DOGE to, quote, "restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government." He said, "My administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency." And notes as well that earlier in January, Elon Musk said in an interview that DOGE may not be able to cut $2 trillion, as he suggested earlier, describing it as the best case outcome. But he said he believes that as much as $1 trillion in federal spending will be cut and would lead to, quote, "no inflation." He believes they can remove entire bureaus and agencies and offices and fire tons of people. And basically, the American people won't even feel it because he suggests these individuals are not really serving a necessary role, which of course is what he demonstrated with Twitter when he took it over and then fired like 90% of them. And the platform suddenly seemed to work more efficiently, right? Now, like when it comes to the many individuals, this whole agenda of firing government workers or possibly getting rid of entire agencies, we'll have to see whether Trump actually does this. He's saying he will. He's talking about it. Musk is talking about it. It does seem that between him, the DOGE department, and others he's bringing in right now who are keen on changing the culture in Washington, that some pretty big shifts are likely, no matter what. But we are now seeing some legal challenges, and I think it's no coincidence that the legal challenges are really focused on trying to stop these firings. Folks, that said, thank you for joining me. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. A lot going on in the U.S., to say the least. So come back tomorrow. We'll talk about more of what's happening right now. That said, please share this video, give us a like, and thank you so much for being here. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.